I'm Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Adamich, Air National Guard Program Manager. And before I introduce our speakers and actually let them introduce themselves, the intent of this speakers panel is to provide the incoming mission planners with the recommendations, best practices learned based on previous mission planners' experience. So with that, I'd like to introduce Captain White. Go ahead and tell us about what unit you're assigned to, the missions that you've been associated with IRT.
I am with the 147th Attack Wing in Houston, Texas at Ellington Field. I'm a civil engineer officer, currently working as a wing executive officer as well. I did the 2019 Utah to Mutavik relocation project for IRT, and then I was the OIC for the 20 Camp Pomalu IRT project as well.
Very good. So Captain White brings a wealth of experience. And where is Murktavik at?
Murktavik is a small remote village in western Alaska.
Okay, yeah, so very remote. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Very good. I'd like to introduce our next panel speaker, First Lieutenant Amelia Brooks.
Yes, I'm First Lieutenant Amelia Brooks. I'm from the 138th Fighter Wing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was the OIC for the Camp Pomalu FY19 project. That's in Oahu, Hawaii. And we built a huge STEM project. It was pretty fun.
Excellent. And your professional background?
I'm an environmental engineer on the outside. I'm a DSG for the Air National Guard. So I do mostly contracting for the Army Corps of Engineers, and then I do some air permitting and things like that for the oil and gas industry.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. And then our third panel speaker, First Lieutenant Kevin Phillips.
My name's, again, First Lieutenant Kevin Phillips. I'm the executive officer for Charlie Company 6th Engineer Support Battalion based out of Peoria, Illinois. I was the duration OIC for Camp Kamasa, and that is the camp that is being developed for autistic and handicapped children.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, well, we'll press into the questions. This is a question for Captain White, and it's a two-part question. A lot of my questions, as you're going to find, are kind of two-part, so stand by. So the primary purpose of the IRT program is readiness training, with incidental benefits to the communities that we have the opportunity to serve. Can you share with our mission planners how you ensure high-value readiness training to each of the rotations and units on a CE project? And two, how do you ensure also, incidentally, providing the greatest impact to the community itself?
Well, that comes working with the community partner, and with IRT, the projects are pre-selected, determined on the actual training guidelines. They are selected in order to ensure that there's enough training for enough crafts in CE. That's the issue. We can go in and have a whole bunch of horizontal work, or we can have a whole bunch of vertical work, and we want to try to find a good balance between the both. So a project like Mukhtavik had structural building. We also had roads, which is highly unusual that we get to build roads, but then it also had the specific craft labor. And then when we do our unit manning documents, we also build the project and the unit manning documents to what we actually like. We're not going to bring out 5 plumbers if we don't have enough plumbing work for 5 plumbers. So we kind of converge that into what we best see as mission planners for the training to enable the units to have their best training efforts. As far as the community, that's based on the projects, and that's a lot of pre-planning with the IRT program and project managers ahead of time. And then we come in and we say, this opportunity would be great for us take on. Mutavik had a number of projects in the beginning, and they listed out about 10 projects. And as the Air National Guard being the lead service, we determined, okay, these 4 projects are best suited projects for come in. So that gave the most benefit to our training needs, and it also gave the most benefit to the community because it was what they needed and what we needed to train on.
Excellent. So would you say that you don't necessarily, you have an idea of, what the training requirements are going to be going into a project, but some of that really kind of develops as the initial planning meeting, mid-planning, final planning meeting develops. So it's sort of a work in progress.
Yes, sir. Depending on the projects, like I said, we usually have what we're going to go in and actually do. We have the base projects that we want to take on, and we put those out at the initial planning meeting. If this is what we're on, and as we develop throughout the year of planning, sometimes those projects will morph. Sometimes some projects will be taken back, and sometimes other projects will be added, just depending on the needs from the units that they give us and the needs that the community has.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is kind of on the same lines, and I'm going to direct this question to First Lieutenant Phillips, also kind of pairing readiness with accountability. And during your opportunity to lead during Camp Kamasa in 2020, how did you manage meeting the program intent, readiness training, while balancing community expectations? Did you face any challenges in the working relationship with the contractor? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yes, sir. So when we arrived, it was evident very quickly that a lot of the blueprints and the contractors working on site kind of differed in how we went about constructing the buildings, the cabins that we were working on. We were able to overcome that, thankfully, with a bunch of our reservists who were construction workers on the outside, able to read those plans and develop solutions for that. But going forward in the future, I think it would be beneficial if we would be able to get our hands on blueprints of the sites themselves. That way our service members going into it will be able to familiarize themselves with the blueprints themselves and go about coming up with any solutions that they might find or putting out those RFIs.
Copy that. Lieutenant Brooks or Captain White, would you also agree with that statement?
In my experience, again, we were building an 11,000 square foot commercial style building at Camp Pamalu, and we were able to see iterations of those blueprints as they were being updated, because again, they were still in the design process at the very beginning of our planning. And so as they go through, we'll get 65% drawings, and then we'll get 95% drawings. And at those points, we were able to put in our RFIs. Our challenge was that the actual contractor wasn't selected until the day before our final planning meeting, which in that event created things that we had already, RFIs we had already sent up, and those type of things kind of started to change as we were moving through. So we didn't have a clear idea of where we were starting. And they didn't really have a clear idea of our position either. So that was kind of the challenge that we had to work through with the contractors. And again, it's all about relationships and making sure your expectations and your vision are clear from the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Usually it's anytime, there's significant challenges with these missions and these IRT projects, it usually comes back to communication, whether it's intra-service, inter-service, or civil military relations. And so I'll direct a question back to you again then, and it really kind of tying into those relationships. One of the benefits of the IRT program is to strengthen the civil military relationships. In your experience, how important is developing the relationship with the community partner, the contractors, the suppliers early in the process? And what advice would you give first-time project managers or OICs for managing those relationships?
So first of all, as a first-time OIC, I'm sure you're feeling this, but I know that I didn't understand fully what my position was, and I learned that as I moved through the process. So I think that really looking back and listening to these lessons learned panel and taking all of your tools that they will provide you at the very beginning and really digging in and asking the questions right off the bat so you have a clear intent moving forward before you try to engage with the community partner and with their contractors. But at that point, set those expectations, understand where you are, and they have never worked in this situation before either. And so I think that takes a lot of grace and a lot of flexibility between you and the community partners. And we want to leave a positive experience for them, so they want to work with us again, and also to understand that we have a positive mission. So with our contractors, there was a lot of push-pull at the very beginning, because if you have any experience with construction contractors in the commercial world, they have a very strict way of how they're going to run their project, and that does not involve volunteer service members coming in and doing any of those jobs. So if it was up to them, we wouldn't have started building until the end of our 20 weeks there, which is not we can't do that. We are there to train. So it was really communicating why we were there, what we needed to accomplish, and being able to help them see the vision and help them work creatively to overcome maybe some of those stricter ideas of what commercial building is, so that we could best train our people and get the most possible benefit for our community partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that brings up a good point with the IRT missions, and it really kind of highlights the importance of lines of communication, right? So typically the mission OICs are the focal point for a contact with the community partner, and oftentimes, I know with the medical projects, but with CE as well, you know, we have typically a lead community partner that really is kind of the relay for the rest of the project on the other side. And it's I think, vital in the process that those lines of communication and those expectations are set up front from the beginning, so that, you know, all the planners and personnel on the military side understand, you know, who the relay points are, as well as the community partners as well, so that there's not, you know, loss of communication and people aren't talking around people. And we're really, some of these relationships can be guarded or a little bit fragile, right? And so you do need to take the time to really develop that personal relationship with those community partners outside of just the talk about the mission, right? But learning about their nuances and cross-cultural competency as well. So yeah, absolutely, imperative. First Lieutenant Phillips, you and I had an opportunity to talk a little bit and kind of just pairing into that communication conversation. To lead any organization or team successfully, mission planners will need to maintain open lines of communication. Can you share with the mission planners some of the challenges you faced perhaps with inter-service communication based on organizational cultural differences, and how did your team work through these challenges?
Sir, working, just all the branches are inherently different. So everybody has their own form of communication, inter-service. How we overcame this, we began doing hot washes after every day. The entire group, all services involved, would meet. That way we could ask the individuals as a whole who had any questions, who saw anything that needed to be addressed. Then we take these or any comments, and then the staff and officers would get together and do a separate hot wash, discuss any issues that occurred that day, how we were going to move forward, and what the plan was for the next day. Excellent.
Yeah, and do you have any examples of or situations where things maybe got a little tense or heated, and, you know, how did you handle that?
Fortunately not, sir. Everyone cooperated pretty well together. There was we actually did have a little competition between services at the end, and that got a little heated, but it was good. It was all in good fun.
Excellent. So in his civilian life, obviously, Lieutenant Phillips is a firefighter, so it's all about prevention, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. We'll redirect back to Captain White. And this is more involved with like the planning, and you and I had the opportunity to talk a little bit about contracting, which is something I'm learning a little bit more about in my role as a program manager. But typically the lead service component is responsible for developing and executing contracts for heavy equipment, food, transportation, those types of things. And as the mission OIC, can you provide our mission planners with your level of involvement and the importance of understanding the nuances of the contracting requirements in the planning and execution phase?
Yes, sir. So contracting is something that has to be hit on the head early on. You cannot wait until the last minute just because you think, okay, this is IRT, different money. It's a little different, and especially for those of us that work in the civilian world and we ESG, which what I was when I came into this, I have to always remember that contracting is much different on the military side than it is in the civilian world. We can't just go out and say, okay, I need a truck today and I'll have it tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. So knowing who the contracting is, knowing who the money person is, and working with your project manager are critical. You need to identify what contracts you're going to have at your initial planning meeting, and once those established, then you can start working with those and other individuals to figure out how to actually do the contracts. There is numerous papers involved. It also depends on, say, if you're in a place like we were for Matavik, we could only sole contracts. There was no other barges that could come in. There was no other fuel company that could come in. We were extremely limited. We had only one airplane we could go with. And that's not typical for contracting. They want to go out and get their 3 bids. So you have to also work with them and discuss, hey, I can only get this person to come in and do what I am doing, and make sure that they're understanding that. We had contracts literally being written and finished up the day before things were being put on a barge and sent to us. And that's very stressful as a project manager, someone that's on ground and that is waiting on this equipment to get here in order to finish your project. So as a first-time mission OIC, you have to be aware of that. Coming in second-time mission OIC, I knew contracting was something I needed to figure out during the initial planning meeting. As a new mission OIC, as Brooks said, you're drinking don't know what is going on. You don't understand the project fully. You probably just got put on the project a week before, and when you were in Germany at Silver Flag. You just never know. So try to get as much information. Use your project program managers, because they know the nuances. They know everything that's going on. If you are not a full-timer, it is extremely hard to manage your civilian job and manage the IRT project. So work with them and try to figure out a balance. Maybe they can bring you in on some orders just to work on contracts. Work with the other people that are available that are full-time IRT staff, and they'll walk you through it. They'll get you through it. But yes, be very cognizant that that is something that can hold up your project, and your guys are going to be on ground with no opportunity to train. And then that's losing money for the community, and that's doing a disservice to those unit members.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like it's critical. I mean, you can't execute the training requirements that you're going to need. Obviously, you're not going to be able to accomplish the project objectives that the community has in mind if you don't have those contracts in place. So it sounds like it's a highly critical piece of the planning phase. And it also sounds like, leaning towards your, CE project managers to make sure that, you're doing a lot of crosstalk with them to ensure that what you foresee being equipment requests or requirements for the project are aligning with what they're tracking. And then really just having an action item tracker, right, to ensure that everybody's hitting the timelines and holding them to those suspense. And then also having, those backup COAs as well, because things, as you know, don't necessarily always work out.
Yes, sir. And then I'll put the point, also work with your community partner, because they may be able to get you something that you need. I needed fuel in Matavik. We had an issue with DLA. I got fuel a week before I left, but luckily my community partner was able to help me and pre-front me fuel for the duration that we were out there. So work with them and do it all legally, of course. But just work with them and see if there's ways that they can help you out as well, if you know you're going to be stuck with something that's not going to come through with contracting.
Excellent. Thanks, Captain White.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of experience that way. So I'll redirect the question towards Lieutenant Brooks. And again, this kind of ties into logistics as well. And you and I had a little bit of an opportunity to talk about this, but the success of an IRT project relies on the effective management of people and resources, as Captain White has already alluded to. In your experience, how did maintaining the UMD, the unit manning document, and establishing and maintaining lines of communication and assignment of roles and responsibilities make or break your project towards like mass bed down considerations, mass feeding, your reception staging, onward and forward movement planning?
So my project, as far as personnel goes, I had 530 plus people come through my project in 20 weeks. So it was very critical that prior to people coming in, I knew who was specifically. We bed down 75 people at a time to know when they were arriving, how they were arriving, make sure that we had the beds for them. There was no overlap, because sometimes there are between the first rotation and the second rotation. And then also sometimes surprises happen, and flexibility is important. I had a surprise 45 extra personnel that showed up in between 2 rotations. So knowing what I had available versus what I was using was very important at that point. And then also feeding those people. We had to make sure we had enough food and enough personnel to actually go through all of that. Communication is key from the very, very beginning, from the IPM, knowing who your person is for every single one of your units that are coming through. It's very important. And making sure, and again, this is joint services, so making sure you have somebody from each service that's going representation at every meeting, on every teleconference that you have, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. We personally, the week before every rotation, we'd have a all call basically, so everyone could check in where we were on the project schedule, so they were aware of what they were expecting to be able to construct at that time. Also, they were aware if we had an extra 45 people and how that was going to affect how they were bedding down, and make sure everyone just really understood what they were coming into when they were coming in. So that really helps with conflict resolution and making sure that nobody had some weird expectations that weren't happening. And again, the UMD also, and I think that Captain White said this, it's important that we have the right people for the right project items. So we're not going to have like 15 plumbers come in if we don't have that work that week. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that communication going the whole time, so that we didn't end up with people not having anything to train on, or we were missing some sort of schedule because we didn't have electricians and we had electrical work that needed to be done. So that is very key through the entire process from IPM all the way through.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. And you know, as mission planners, you know, like how vital it is to have somebody that's assigned to the UMD that is extremely task oriented and detail oriented, you know, names, contact information, good phone numbers, good email addresses, any dietary restrictions, and then obviously tracking, you know, receiving these folks at the airport and what time are their flights coming in, and being able to communicate them because they got held up. And, you know, it really does take a lot of effort to get everybody actually in place. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to review after action reports for 2 years now. And I can tell you hands down, out of the top 5 things that fail to get planned for, it's the RSOI plan for sure. And then the other challenge is always the unit manning document. So, you know, be sure that when you assign that role and responsibility to the individuals that are going to assume that responsibility, that you know that you're going to keep your thumb on them for a little while, right? And make sure that they really are doing what you need them to do, because it's very critical to the orchestration of the project. So very good. All right. Let's talk about accountability. Lieutenant Phillips, I'll kind of redirect back to you. The IRT platform by design requires the development of collaborative relationships between the military and the communities we have the opportunity to train and serve in. Both the military and community partners are responsible for bringing certain resources to the table. The community partner typically provides the venue to conduct the training as well as the materials necessary to construct the project. The military leverages its personnel and equipment to execute the training. How did your team account for the tools and equipment at the training site?
Sir, well, I'm sure everyone is familiar, has either heard or experienced firsthand the horror story that is missing gear. To kind of negate that issue, we assigned a tool NCO that was in charge of the 2 quad cons that we were given that had all of the equipment in it. We started by completely stripping them, pulling everything out, getting a detailed list of everything in those quad cons. And then that tool NCO, it was different every day. Again, we made sure it was a non-commissioned officer or above. And that person was literally in charge of just tracking everything that came in and out of those quad-cons. And that way, at the end of the day, if we were missing our hand drill or even a screwdriver, we knew exactly who had that piece of gear. And if it was missing by the end of the day, we could track down that person, and they were able to retrace their steps instead of having everybody get online and spend hours searching the site for one single tool.
Absolutely. So you did that on a daily basis?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I guess I'll lobby this question back out to the panel speakers. You know, as you have different rotations come through and perhaps transfer of responsibility, how do you handle, you know, taking the inventory that either came on the manifest from Grissom, or sometimes we leave the tools in place like at Camp Palmalu, but how do you manage, you know, the opening and the receiving of the Connex with all the tools and all the way through the process to actually turn that back over to asset manage on the back end? I mean, are there tools in place to do this? How critical is that? Either Lieutenant Brooks or Captain White, you're welcome to chime in.
Yeah, it's pretty critical. You get the toolkit from Grissom. It comes with their inventory. So on the Air Force side, we have production controllers, and that is part of their responsibilities, is making sure that that tool trailer is managed. That is one of their training. So they have to be able to take inventory. That's what they do at home station. That's what they do deployed as well. It's one of their many jobs. So when we get there, we turn it over to the production controller, gets the keys. They open everything up, just like the other LT stated. They do the full inventory, and then they keep it locked up during the day, and then they would come back and collect the tools at night. When we transferred hands, the outgoing would do the inventory, and then the incoming would come back and then do an inventory and make sure that that outgoing inventory matched the incoming inventory. Usually you don't have an overlap, so you have to, as the OIC or the NCOIC has to also look at that and say, okay, well, we got this from Grissom. Now we're missing 5 hammers. What happened between here? And you have to get with that. So they had to have that inventory done before they left, so we could find any missing tools that weren't matching up. And then that way the new one would be checked out. So they should have that same inventory as the outgoing one did. And we did that every rotation. And I'm not sure if Lieutenant Brooks did the same thing, but I imagine she did something similar.
So I would like to add, if that's okay.
Yeah.
That we had our very formal tools inventory list. We checked out, that was part of our rotations checkout, was to make sure that everything was in there so they couldn't leave the site for their final day until that was done. And the very first day of being on site, that was a check-in for them. So we had an NCO in between all that. That was overarching duration staff that was over that. But we made sure that we assigned that back to the ops group or whoever it was that was coming in, the ops commander, NCO for their section that would come in and take that over. And at the very, very end, because we did leave our tools there for the next year, so we had to seal all that back up into the Connex box and make sure it was put somewhere that was safe. Grissom actually sent somebody out to do a final inventory before we closed that up and locked that up.
Yeah, and this is something I'm learning a bit about. So if there are discrepancies, so let's say tools go missing, I mean, things happen, right? Are there processes in place to manage that discrepancy, like a report, a survey?
So I think there is, but I was never formally given that. I think that we acquired more tools than we lost. And some of those tools that we got from Grissom were actually broken. As soon as we got there, we were able to see that, and we had to fix some of those things. So be prepared for that. You can utilize Power Pro and people like that for those small motor items, but sometimes the things just didn't work.
We reported up to Grissom. I would take full inventory and I sent it over to them because we didn't have somebody come and check ours out. So we marked what was broken. We marked what was missing. I mean, it's minimal usually on the job site, hopefully. What's actually missing, but yeah, they take a complete inventory when it gets back, and then that would be up for the Grissom reserve guys to be able to answer that. I would put that onto them of what exactly happens. I don't know if they
Well, I can tell you firsthand, being the program manager, I've had to assume that responsibility. And so I've learned a lot about tools, or at least missing tools. So yeah, IRT does have a concept of operations, asset management, ConOps that explains, the process of that. And ultimately when tools go missing, and we're not just talking tools that get worn out naturally, but, things vanish sometimes, we end up having to file a report survey. And since Grissom is the actual physical property owner of that, they have to initiate the formal response, but it's the person who signed for the equipment on the ground. So the OIC is ultimately responsible for doing a lot of the legwork with the investigation and whatnot, and points of contact and timelines. And so there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done prior to the signing of the official investigating officer and filing that report of surveys. So I've learned a lot about that over the past couple of months. So I do know that. So yeah, there are processes in place. So perfect. All right. Well, let's talk about more accountability. How does that sound? And this is more training metrics. So I guess I'll redirect initially back to Lieutenant Brooks. Ultimately, IRT is a training program funded by Congress. Accurate tracking of training metrics, funding, and resource utilization is important to both monitor the effectiveness of the program and justify the continued appropriations of the program. How did you effectively track the training hours, the readiness requirements that the members needed, and what lessons did you learn along the way?
So when I got into this, I was not aware if there were any tools available to actually track, most importantly, like an Excel spreadsheet that could do that automated for me so I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So I created a few, I tweaked a few that I found from other places to better utilize for IRT. And so I was able to, and I think those are out there somewhere. So just using those tools, and I think that they're going to be available to you guys, or at least some of those tools. Use what they give you. Don't reinvent the wheel. But if you can make it better, go ahead, obviously. But it's just really important that you start tracking immediately. Your training objectives, you start hitting those even in IPM, especially for the officers and the NCOICs who are learning project management, logistics, those type of things. We're already hitting some of those training objectives right at the beginning. And then as you move through, again, I had 530 people who came through the site. I can't do that at the end. I need to do that as I go, make sure that we're hitting our goals, because one of those goals is 100 hours of training for each individual who comes through. So we make sure that you're meeting your man hours, and then also that you're meeting those meets, those medals, those things that we have, those mission essential training tasks that we have that we want to make sure that we're getting, so that at the end, when you're doing your after action report and when they're trying to report all of this up back to Congress, back to wherever it's going, that you have that information. It's easy, it's automated, it's right there. So track early and track often.
Yeah, and I know I had put a request back out, Captain White. I know you were tied into that, and Lieutenant Brooks, and I think Master Sergeant Cisco is the one that ended up, I think, giving me the trackers. So there were 3 trackers that I saw that were developed by various teams. I'm not sure who was the owner of that, but yeah, beautiful tools. I think they're exceptional products. Really, it tracks the requirements per AFSC, per upgrade training. You can put the member's name in there and actually check a box so that, when they go back to their home units and their unit training managers need to update the systems, you guys have it all already delineated, and it allows you to kind of track how many hours and how many readiness requirements were conducted during the operations. So it was beautiful. Nice work to all of you guys, all of you ladies and gentlemen who had any touch on those products. They look great. And so I did take those products and I posted them into the Mission Planners Toolkit. I think it's item 14. I don't remember the name of it right now, under the civil engineering folder. And all 3 of those tools are available. So I would encourage the mission planners to, again, prepare early. There's a lot of kind of pre-prep and study, right? Studying how to, plan and the tools that are available. But get familiar with those trackers, because yeah, you created a wonderful product, and I would highly encourage you to utilize that. And I'm going to
I
redirect.
would like to add, if I
Yeah,
could,
go
sir,
ahead.
that those seem to be mostly Air Force related. So if the sister services wanted to track and do that a little more effectively, they could add that in at the IPM or the mid-planning meeting, so that we can help also track for them. Because I know that we were signing LOIs and those kind of things for the Marines and for their Army. If they wanted to go ahead and have that tracked at the same time, it would be in their best interest.
Absolutely. Yeah, the concept is out, the design is really there. It's just a matter of changing the naming, convention within the templates, specific to, whatever terms that, the Marine Corps uses or Navy. So yeah, very easily manipulatable. So very good. Yeah, I would recommend that as well. Of course, I'm being selfish because, I'm tracking all the Air Force metrics coming in, right? So.
And I would definitely add to that to assign that to somebody on the ground. That doesn't need to be the OIC's main focus. Assign that to somebody there. Otherwise, you're going to get bogged down putting in everybody's hours. So I would have somebody put in the hours for the day, and then I transfer them. We would keep that spreadsheet open or do a Google Share Excel spreadsheet and just let them input it, and then I could take that data for the daily and weekly sit reps. Don't put that on your OICs and NCOICs to track, because they're going to put that in their final AR with all their training and all their man hours, so they should already be tracking that themselves. Don't do that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Captain White, you brought up a good point, and really it's kind of looking at the project, from the back end rather than the front end. We were talking about all this pre-planning, but probably one of the important steps in kind of that pre-planning is to kind of look at really what are the deliverables on the back end. And so the 3 statutory requirements per the Innovative Readiness Training are the community application, the military application, and the after action report. Can you tell us how you utilize the AAR, the after action report, in mission planning efforts, and how you accounted for the training and the importance of this accountability in readiness reporting, and basically our ability to demonstrate Congress's return on investment, essentially?
Yeah, so going into the project, I was not aware of the AAR that is actually used to track with OSD. The only thing I'd had available was I went on a 2018 IRT when we did the Halomena plantation. So I was the person responsible at my unit to do our training AAR. So I had a really good idea about that and thought that is all that was required. There was never a discussion about, at the end, you got to fill in this electronic form online, and it's very, very finicky, and it requires exact information. I'm going into year 2. I had that information so that when I was doing my planning, it made me a better mission planner. I feel that I was able to say, okay, this is what OSC is going to ask for me in the end. They're going to ask me to track this for the community value. This is going to ask me to track this for the hours. Knowing what you're going to have to produce on the back end will help you be a better mission planner on the front end. And that's just related to money and man hours and training. Those are the 3 big objectives you're going to look at. Of course, you have all the other training objectives you have to meet, but when you are submitting that final document and you want it to be a good document to go forward, find out what that document is ahead of time, get with the IRT project and program managers, and also get with your fellow lead services and say, hey, are we tracking this exactly the same?
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a lot of good points. And yeah, the way that the OSD AAR is built, it really is built based on, phases of the planning. So, planning conferences, equipment, tools, unit manning documents, the actual training itself. Obviously, the funding is a big piece. The RSOI plan. So, by taking a look at that RSI, it almost kind of chops out how you're going to divide the project and assign different roles and responsibilities within the planning phase. And then I'm asking, as a program manager for all of my, projects this year, you're going to be filling out that AAR from the beginning. So after every planning meeting, you're going to start putting some input in that, because I'm going to expect that AAR be done when you walk off of the job site. You should already have all of your numbers calculated. Your team should have already helped you build all the information so that when I need to hit my suspenses and my due dates back to OSD, I'm not waiting for information. Because when mission planners, I know for me, once I walked off a site, I was exhausted. And I guess we'll go a little more woo-woo. Let's see here. Lieutenant Phillips, I'm going to redirect back towards you. And, We know the IRT program is built for readiness training, and those are things that, obviously we can track those readiness requirements and mark them off on a record and update systems back on the home front. But it's also an opportunity for leadership development, an excellent opportunity for leadership development. So can you provide us with a little bit of information? How did your team, did they engage or embrace in sort of a leadership initiative? And how are you developing your people and developing those relationships with the folks that were coming on the ground during your rotations? And how did you make that a priority also with your planning and execution?
Sir, the IRTs themselves give excellent training opportunity. You get to see, in my case, my Marines in action. It's kind of our version of the active duties field time. We get to get out there, see what our Marines are capable of. I was a platoon commander at the time of this IRT, and I like putting my my squad leaders in positions where they have to choose individuals within their squad that they believe are capable of leadership roles. I encourage them to kind of take a step back, promote that lower level leadership, see what the Marines are capable of. And again, just the field environment gives them the perfect opportunity to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an opportunity for, leaders that haven't served in these roles in, project management to step in, in a controlled environment with some mentors, on hand and really develop that coaching, counseling, and mentoring opportunity. And so I think that sometimes, in my experience, we get so mission oriented and mission focused that we lose focus on our people and our people development. And so I would highly encourage the mission planners to really, weigh that balance between, all of the demands of the project and all these requirements with contracting and unit manning documents and bed down and food and sustainment, but don't lose focus on, your people and that the opportunity to develop those individuals, because we're building our bench, right? So we've had the opportunity to serve, but we've got to prepare those that are, aligned with us to also step into our roles, so that if we're called to duty real world and somebody needs to fill our position on that mission planning team, that they're prepared to do so. They've got the training and the tools and the capability, and we can trust that they have the ability to do that. So yeah, very good. Lieutenant Brooks, any comments that way on development of personnel?
Absolutely. I have to say, first of all, for myself, I was a second lieutenant whenever I was selected for this project. I had never had the opportunity to do that. So this was a huge opportunity for myself to grow and really understand and shine, but also learn through, drinking from the fire hose and really just being thrown out into the world and, sink or swim. So I had the opportunity to be partnered with several senior NCOs that were SMEs and duration staff for me that I really got to learn a lot from. But also in that situation, we had some tech sergeants who came in who were our heavy equipment duration, who had never had that kind of responsibility ever before and who shined. But this was something that they would never have been able to, an opportunity to do this, especially in the Air National Guard, if you're going only on the weekends and, 2 weeks a year. This was huge to just really develop, to really understand the inner workings of the behind the scenes, such as contracting and how, the GPC card, how the money moves, where it goes, the color of money even, which pot goes to where. And then also just the logistics of moving people in and out. And we did that, 10 weeks we had rotations through. So we got to practice. And again, we got better as we went. Clearly, the first rotations was very, there's a stutter step, I guess, at the very beginning. And also, you could change up your leadership, how you chose to lead every 2 weeks and see what worked and what didn't. And then on that micro level, on the rotation level, it was good. Some people would bring their commanders in, the lieutenant colonels, and it was always good to look at them and say, sir, you're here for moral support, really. Please allow your lower officers really the chance to lead this. Let your NCOs step up who need to do that. I'd always assign them as the safety officer, honestly. So they had something to do and they were there, they felt relevant, but also so that other people could step up in that role. So I cannot say enough how good IRT is for developing those people, those leadership roles, and then really just people understanding their job, their AFSC, and what they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had an opportunity to speak with Captain White and actually observe her in action during the planning phase for Camp Pamalu this last year. And, something that I observed that she did, very well as a planner and as the mission OIC. She really kind of established, her commander's intent, what they were there to do. She set her expectations of the group and said, I'm going to hold you to it, right? Really established kind of that organizational structure, and then basically empowered the team to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities as a part of, again, the team. And that's the key, is you can't do it alone. You have to trust the people that you're working with. Again, Captain White, nice job. Beautiful work. So I didn't get to see you in action, but I know based on your experience in Alaska and during the planning phase, you're definitely a great leader. And with that, we often, sacrifice a lot as mission planners during these training events, obviously a lot of time, right? And I guess that's the last question, and maybe I'll lobby it back to Captain White to start. How do you balance that kind of work-life balance with, planning a mission and doing the best job that you can, and all the people that all of a sudden you assume responsibility for, and then managing, some twins at home and your husband, right? And, your other professional careers and obligations. So, what are your recommendations for the planners so that they can take care of both themselves, but also the mission?
It's definitely a juggle, just like in any other job. This is job number 3. You're probably a civilian employee, you're a DSG, and then you have the IRT program on top of everything. So it's a juggling act. For me, I don't usually pull out my laptop at night. That's just something I decided once I had my kids that wasn't going to happen unless I absolutely needed to. So you have to learn how to balance it. I've had to learn to let work go when I leave the house or leave work, and unless I need to get on my laptop or get on the phone, then it's left at work. My family needs me as well. Now, going away for 3 months, that was a struggle. I had to rely on my parents and my husband to take care of my kids while I was gone. But I had a very, very understanding spouse who totally supports me. So that helps. As far as planning and figuring things out, relying on your other duration staff is so critical. I cannot say that enough. I had some of the most outstanding senior NCOs that I could imagine for my very first time. And we text almost daily. We still text daily. It's just something you had to build. We had to build that teamwork. So I would assign different duties. One got a schedule. One was working the contracts. One was doing something else, working on that. Plus, I utilized my units that were coming in. I put somebody on tracking down heavy equipment contractors in Alaska. I said, I just don't have time to find this. Chief offered up and said, hey, I have some time. I'm on orders. I can do that for you. And I utilize them. So reaching out to your units, they want to help. They want to be involved. It's a leadership opportunity for them. So let them get involved with it. It does not hurt to add more people to your team. It honestly doesn't. Rely on people, rely on the IRT staff, because they will help you get through things that you're not in it. You're not alone. You're not a lone wolf. So use your team. We're all family in the military. I think we hear that pretty often, but use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So set some boundaries right away for yourself. Yeah. And then, obviously empower your people to help you out and do it as a team. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Lieutenant Brooks, do you have anything to add to that? I know you're also, you have a busy family at home and obviously have sacrificed a lot of time as well for the IRT program.
For sure. So I think this is also part of your training, right? So trying to figure out how to manage your time effectively and really understanding that you are the project manager. You're managing those tasks, but use your people absolutely 100%. You are in charge of tracking and making sure that everything is going the way that it's going and that you know where things are and who has that responsibility, but you delegate that down and you check in every once in a while, and that really helps you helps you manage that time. I was not as remote as Captain White. So during my 4 months that I was gone, I was able to bring my kids to Hawaii with me for a small part of that time during their summer. So they came up and we got to hang out, on the evenings and do those kind of things. And I was there for a Girl Scout camp. Pamalu is a Girl Scout camp. So I was able to actually chaperone a Girl Scout camp there with my girls, their STEM camp there. So that was fun. I was able to incorporate some of my, they could come up and watch me do my job and see how that works. So that was fun for the family part of that. So it was good.
That's all I had as far as the serious questions. So, I think that Lieutenant Phillips might have had to step out. He is on call right now, so I did see him step away. But Captain White, Lieutenant Brooks, do you ladies have anything in addition that you just are pressing that you would like to share with our mission planners before we close up?
I'd love to say, have fun with it. It's a fantastic training opportunity. It was the best 3 months of my life. It was so much fun that I was throwing in my application before I was out of the state of Alaska on another project. And I mean, Lieutenant Brooks can adhere to this. I was texting her, have you heard when the project managers are coming out? Have you heard? I was like, are you doing it again? It's an absolutely great opportunity. For me, it was like a mini deployment almost for us because we were so remote. So we got that really good team bonding, that team building. At night, we had nowhere to go. So we hung out with each other. Units really formed a tight bond. It was the best fast-paced project management experience that I think I've ever had. And I've had project management experience in the civilian world, and I use those tools also that you have. If you're in the civilian world, bring those tools in. We're really bad at it, I find, especially in the Air National Guard. And I haven't been an officer on the active duty side, but we're bad about not using easy tools that are out there. So spreadsheets, schedules, and Microsoft Project, things like that make your life easier. So if you have people on the outside that have ideas, take them in, because we're just not the best at it on the military side. So I say just have fun, enjoy it. You will absolutely love it.
I can piggyback off that. Definitely have fun. The experience, the job experience is out of this world and amazing. It is super fast paced. You're constantly having to be incredibly flexible and fix a problem. Every day there's a fire that needs to be put out. So that's super, super developmental as far as you as a person, but also part of IRT is getting out in the community and getting to know the people that we serve on the day-to-day basis. So really take advantage of wherever you are. I was in West Virginia the year before as just rotational staff on IRT, and I'd never been to West Virginia. I didn't know anything about that, and I met some of the best people and had some of the best experiences as far as just within 4 hours of that place, really getting to know our country and the community that we serve on a day-to-day basis. So enjoy that and make sure that you take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I know, like I said, Lieutenant Phillips stepped away, but Captain White, Lieutenant Brooks, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to, share your insights with the future mission planners. It sounds like we've got a couple of excellent mentors, perhaps at our disposal, very sparingly. I'm not volunteering you, but I know I have your contact information. So I know when I get in a jam as a program manager, I know, the people that I can trust, right? And the people that I know that I can lean on and provide that top cover for me, right? Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for your time. I think this was an excellent session, and hopefully our mission planners will also find it very useful. And I would encourage our mission planners to hopefully have the opportunity to replay this video and really sit down and take some notes, because this was jam-packed with pearls, good information, vital critical points, and it really will help to kind of smooth the way moving forward during your mission planning. So that's all we have, and we'll stand by for any questions.